what we're planning on doing to protect the breeding waders on Mongan Bog. Niamh will take us through learning about ecosystems in Forest Ireland. Then we'll see about how you can get involved. An Taisce is entrusted with 3 bogs across Ireland. So we have Mongan Bog, Onini Bog in Mayo, and Slieve Bog in Monaghan, Tyrone. So tonight's meeting or webinar is obviously we're going to focus on Mongan Bog, which is in Offaly on the Athlone border. So Mongan Bog is a precious raised bog ecosystem. It's one of the best preserved raised bogs in Western Europe, over 9,000 years old and located near Clonmacnoise, County Offaly. It's scientifically significant. It's one of the last remaining midland raised bogs in Ireland. It has unique biodiversity. It's home to many different species of fauna and flora, home to rare birds. If you've seen Andrea's reel on social media, you'll know that he has heard snipe, redshank, skylark and meadow pipits, the redshank and the snipe being the waders that we're looking after. It's of conservation importance. It's designated as a special protected area for birds and a special area of conservation and a natural heritage area as well. So look, it's facing some threats as well from drainage, fire, turf cutting. Restoration efforts did begin in the 1980s and 90s, and it was kind of refreshed again in 2016 under the EU LIFE project. So if there's anyone on the call, when we were getting involved, when we were organising this webinar, one of the questions that came up for ourselves was, did we know where the name came from? So if there's anyone here local, just drop it in the comments and share if you know why it's named Mongan Bog. The source of all this information on Taisce have a great website page with all the information on Mongan Bog. So the source is just there if you wanted to have a look yourselves, or if you wanted more information, there's plenty of information there. So An Taisce then is collaborating with the Breeding Waders EIP. They very graciously allowed us to go onto the bog and have a look at how it could be managed for breeding waders. Andrea is going to come up next. He'll introduce himself and he'll let you know what plans we have for the bog. So Andrea, I'll hand it over to you.
So much, Karen, and big shout to Valerie, Karen, and Niamh as well for facilitating this and organizing this. My name is Andrea Parisi. I'm project ecologist with the Breeding Waders EIP. And I suppose I'll talk a little bit about waders in general, but also why we want to carry out some of the habitat improvements there in Mongan Bog, and what are our future plans essentially for this particular piece of land. So talking about waders, if I need to find like some common features for this group of birds, would be long legs and fairly large feet essentially. They're used to walk through different habitats from grassland, mudflats, uplands, and rocks, and also they're fairly diverse bill shape, and that's used to probe the ground at the different levels and to feed on different invertebrates and food sources. If, for example, you have on the top left, the redshank is a remarkable species, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And it lives in a wide range of habitats, from uplands, from coastal habitats, and marshes, and markers as well. Then on top right, you have probably the smallest wader species that breeds in Ireland, and it's called red-necked phalarope. And it's a remarkable bird because it breeds in Ireland in very tiny pockets in the west coast, and it migrates through the Atlantic and winters off Peru, and then spends the winter down there, and it comes back again around the 3rd week of May to breed. And it's also remarkable because males, they do most of the incubations, most of the chick rearing, and they tend to the offspring, whereas the female departs to the wintering grounds fairly early. So it's a sort of strategy that is common among waders, but it's kind of unusual in the bird kingdom sort of class. Then we have golden plovers there in the middle left. Is slightly shorter bill. Is a beautiful bird with very dark belly during the breeding season, and that short bill is sort of used to feed on the surface of the ground where invertebrates and little little insects are. Then we have Dhúill as well, middle right there. A remarkable species in Ireland with very few remaining pairs, 20 or 30 pairs breeding in the country. So brink of extirpation, national extirpation, really. Then at the bottom you have snipes and lapwings as well, which are absolutely wonderful species. Lapwings, Ireland, national bird, so really important. I suppose another common feature for this bird is that they breed on the ground. They basically lay the nest on the ground, and it's normally a shallow cup with very little cover on the top. And they lay between 3 and 4 eggs, and this sort of happens between April and May. Then chicks hatch after sort of 20-25 days of incubation, and then the chicks they are called precocial because unless other kind of birds like meadow pipits or skylarks, they are independent essentially. As soon as they come out of the eggs, they walk around the field, probe the ground, feed on invertebrates, and grow very fast. So all these species, they are threatened essentially in Ireland by different pressures. This being the change in land use, and to explain it a little bit better, essentially what happened in Ireland in the last 40-50 years is that the massive wetland that Ireland became drained. Essentially, most fields were drained for agriculture. Intensification of the same agricultural practices increased. More cattle on the ground, more livestock on the ground, so higher grazing pressures, and as a consequence, less habitat available for these birds. On the side, there was an increased predation as well from avian predators such as corvids, including ravens and hooded crows, but also on the ground from foxes and American mink, which is an invasive species introduced in Ireland through the fur industry, which is now terminated, but some of the escapees at the time reproduced and established some populations. I also brought there afforestation because what happened a few years ago is that those wastelands, they were considered wastelands because too wet and too far from any infrastructure, essentially. They were planted with spruce conifer plantations, but they also overlapped with sort of breeding grounds for most of our breeding waders, such as golden plovers, Dhúills, and redshanks as well. So there are other threats such as recreation and the disturbance of dogs on the shorelines, but also on the breeding sites in the macars and the grasslands. So all these pressures worldwide, they cause the decline of this group of birds, of these waders. And most of them, they're near threatened at this stage. And in Ireland, the situation is probably even worse. Just some of the species, here you see like the 10 species that breed in Ireland. Some of the species, like they're probably doing fine, common snipes and common sandpiper. There's a bit of uncertainty around the number because surveys are fairly challenging for these birds. But overall, there has been a decline of 90%, general decline of breeding waders of 90% in Ireland. And some of the birds, like Eurasian, the curlew, there are just 120 pairs left in the country. Dhúill is even more dramatic with around 10, 20 pairs, maybe 30 pairs in the most optimistic or in the best years. And then the phalarope is even less than that. Very much fluctuating the populations of phalaropes just because it's at the southern range of the breeding range, essentially. So there is loads of fluctuation in the numbers. So I suppose the Breeding Waders EIP comes into action to alter the decline of these birds, and with the main aim of re-establish or increase some of the populations. And how do we do that? Essentially through to encourage the uptake of wader-friendly farming by the farming communities. There is a pot of payments there available to farmers to, for example, delay the mowing or use low livestock unit on their fields during the breeding season. This is also complemented by a nest protection, which is professional and systematic, carried out on the ground, and which ensures that those clutches reach maturity and the fledglings can get successfully away for basically. We have also a head starting going on, which is a relatively new technique, and it consists of taking the eggs of the waders in the wild, rear them in captivity or in a rearing facility. In our case, our project partner down in Fota Wildlife Park. And then these eggs, once they hatch and the chicks are old enough, they're brought back into the wild. Essentially, this technique allows us to skip those sort of like few days where eggs and chicks are very vulnerable to predation, and increases. There is compelling evidence that this increases the populations of waders. At the moment, we had started curlew, and for the first time in Ireland and the second time in Europe, we also had started downlin with very good success, 100% success of 11 eggs collected in the wild and 11 chicks released at the breeding sites. So very successful. Karen is also taking care of the engagement and community communication with loads of events in schools and a lot of around the country, really. And it's also so important to know where these birds are, that we have a systematic survey and monitoring work package where around 15 people every season they're around the country counting breeding waders through standard survey techniques, which allows us to know where these birds are and what actions should we take to protect them, and also if those actions are working on the long term. To finish, we also have a package for research and policy, and we have 3 PhD students that are looking at invertebrate abundance, Emily Marsh, or they're looking at the genetic of the downlin population, and that's Andrew Ryan. And also we have Emil Robertson, who is looking at how nest protection is perceived in Ireland. So we get to the topic of, I suppose, this webinar: why Mongan Bog? And if you look at the left-hand side there is a wader sightings heat map that we created with sightings from the 2025 breeding season. You can see the bright spot in the middle is Lough Cree, which is very much of a stronghold for breeding waders in Ireland. So it made sense for us to expand around this sort of hotspot and probe sort of the ground and look for other suitable bogs that could be improved from a breeding wader's perspective. So Mongan Bog really made sense from us, and Karen gave a little bit of overview earlier on. But it's an extensive blanket bog, and it's just under 200 hectares of surface. It's very much wet, with sort of like full of wet features, which are fantastic for chicks of breeding waders for finding food, but it also carry populations of amphibians and invertebrates. And they're also species rich. You can find loads of different plant species, from sundews to bog asphodel, bog cotton, and bog rosemary as well. So different species there that complement the sort of nice habitat that Mongan Bog already is. Talking about the waders that exist in Mongan Bog, the last data we have is essentially from a survey carried out in 1986, and even there we have limited knowledge of what species there were. So for this season, we went out twice in between April and June, carried out what they're called walkover surveys. Essentially, you walk on a straight line. You can see the arrows there, the pink arrows. You walk on a straight line, straight parallel lines, 200 meters apart, and you record every wader species that you see on each side of the line. And for Mongan Bog, I think it was around 7 kilometers, the overall length of the survey, for about 2 hours and a half, 3 hours. What we found? Well, we found 5 redshank pairs and at least 3 snipes, although this could be unrecorded just as such a hard to detect species. We also found a presence of high generalist predators, such as ravens, hooded crows, and foxes at the site. You can see this, the orange spot in the middle there is a fox that was recorded in the middle of the day. But overall, what we found is really like a bog with great potential, where we could tuck in and do some great work for restoration. I'll give a bit of overview maybe of the species we found there, the two species, the redshank and the snipe. The redshank is called the warden of the wetlands, and it's because when a predator is around or a human is intruding into the wetland, that's the first bird that you hear. And if you turn on your sound, you probably hear this. Can you actually hear that? I hope so. And basically, so it's a remarkable species also because the pairs of the species are monogamous, meaning that they stay together their whole life and they come back to the same site time after time, essentially, season after season. In this case, for example, in this picture, you can see is a juvenile. Normally they have very bright red legs, whereas in this case it's slightly orange. The bill as well is not as red and is quite dull. Well, just a bit of fun facts there. The oldest record of a ring bird is actually 26 years old for the species, which just makes you think how long-lived these birds are. And if they come back year after year, they could really be a productive species at any site. The other species is snipe, another remarkable species, really interesting. You can hear between April and June, early in the morning and late at night, you can hear the courtship of these birds, and they're normally referred to as drumming. So the sound sounds something like this. Hope you can hear actually. You cannot actually hear that. Will I try maybe to share the sound? Maybe, sorry, one more second. All right, sorry about that. So it's almost a ghostly sound here. And you would expect actually this sound to be produced by the vocal apparatus of the bird, active apparatus, but it's actually produced by the tail feathers that vibrate at high speed and produce this sound, this low frequency sound that propagates for a really large distance that you can hear like for almost a kilometer away as well. I'll just play the redshank as well, just in case you missed that. It's a lovely sound. Yeah, so just to give you an idea of what's our future plan for the bog, we're going to continue with our professional systematic nest protection on the ground. And we're also going to deliver some scrub removal. Scrubs that are essentially used by predators for hiding, such as foxes or perching by hooded crows and ravens. So we're going to remove some of the scrubs surrounding the bog. And we are also looking at expand our area of interest around the surrounding farmland. So if you know of anyone who could be interested or who has any farm or any waders on the farm that want to be involved in the project, and just let them know. This is just a summary of what we delivered so far. So we are in year one. We delivered monitoring, habitat assessment, and nest protection. We're going to continue with our monitoring and nest protection next breeding season as well. On top of that, scrub removal outside the breeding season. And we're going to do some scrub control as well. And follow up, sort of like making sure the scrubs are not coming back. And also we're going to evaluate our outcomes based on the abundance of waders at the site, essentially. I'll leave it to Niamh, and if you have any other questions later on, let me know. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Andrea. That was amazing. and gorgeous to hear the sounds of the birds as well. No, so I suppose my name is Niamh Dhúill, and I'm delighted to be here this evening as well. And I'm here representing the programs that deliver education and community engagement around the country as well. So An Taisce has a wide range. If you want to go to the next slide there, Andrea. An Taisce has a wide range of programs that deliver this education and community engagement. So, and you'd be familiar with some of them already. So you've got Green Schools, and there's National Spring Clean, which happens every April with local authorities. There's Clean Coasts, which mightn't be so much in the Offaly area, but they're definitely all around the coastal areas. And we've Green Campus, where we're engaging with third level institutions. And then there's the Climate Ambassadors and Green Flag Awards for parks as well, and blue flags that the beaches get awarded. And there's the Globe programme. So there's quite a few. And I work with the programme Learning About Ecosystems and Forests, which is LEAF Ireland. And one of the programmes we have within our programme, or one of the projects, is on Curlew, which is where we go in and plant small woodlands and hedgerows in school grounds. But our remit has broadened. We used to be just learning about forests, and now we're learning about ecosystems and forests. So it's broadened in the last few years. And I suppose just even listening to Andrea there, we're just so fortunate. We've got an amazing variety of habitats in Ireland. I know in this case you're focusing on the Breeding Waders, but I suppose in Ireland we've everything from forests and woodlands to thickets on farms. They're so important, those kind of areas where there's little wild areas. They'd be called Cúne Giria, or the Hare's Corner, places like that. We've got our meadows, the wetlands, obviously, and the bogs, ponds, but they also need to be all interconnected. And that's where hedgerows come in so importantly, and streams and rivers as well. So they're kind of connecting all our communities and the mosaic of landscapes, or through the landscape, these habitats. So in the programme that I work with, we engage a lot with primary schools, secondary schools, third level, and we work with local authorities as well, where we're often planting or restoring areas where woodlands or hedgerows need to be reconnected. And I suppose that's broadening out to now where we're actually helping them plan to restore their whole school grounds, as opposed to maybe just looking at one habitat in isolation. And so this video, if you want to go to the next slide, Andrea, we have a little video that shows the work we're doing. It's just a few minutes long, so hopefully that'll work.
Trees and forests are integral to the health of our planet. They are powerful ecosystems that provide a myriad of benefits for the environment, wildlife, and human society. LEAF addresses the biodiversity and climate crisis by providing nature-based solutions, working with educational institutions, communities, and businesses nationwide to protect, restore, and educate about the importance of our ecosystems and multifunctional benefits of our forests. On Cuil Beag is an initiative of LEAF. We focus on restoring and planting native hedgerows and little woodlands. We involve participants in every stage of the process, from site selection, species selection, to care and maintenance. These woodlands provide the perfect space to dive deep into the LEAF themes of biodiversity, climate, water, community, and products. As woodlands mature, they provide the perfect classroom for experiential hands-on learning, helping students engage with the subject matter in a more tangible way, whether it's learning about plant life cycles, the science of photosynthesis, or learning about forest products and their uses. Our primary focus is educators. Educators have a unique opportunity to inspire curiosity and environmental stewardship in students by taking lessons outdoors and fostering a deeper connection with trees, forests, and nature in general.
That's great. Thanks, Andrea. And if you want to go to the next slide, the next slide shows, it's just a little overview of the map of Ireland, where to date, we've planted at least 52, I'm going to say, yeah, planted 52 small woodlands, or the Cuil Beags. So they'd be hedgerows or woodlands all around the country. And we're actually into our second full restoration project, which we're engaging with, so with a primary school and a secondary school. And I suppose in the year ahead, we will be working in Meath, where we have some funding to work with a number of schools and communities there. And we have funding from the Department of Agriculture and Forestry to work with the 3 teacher training colleges. And that's going to be really our focus, is to really try and build the confidence of the teachers while they're training, so that they're more likely to get outdoors into nature when they're teaching. So yeah, so thanks a million for giving me that space to share that story as well. For Margaret. I'll pass you back to Karen now.
Thanks, Niamh. A lovely overview of some lovely work you're doing there. And thanks, Andrea, for a comprehensive overview as well.